Odysseus and his men were no longer riding a magical, God-given gale. Stripped of the winds that had carried them home, they were reduced to brute, agonizing labor, forcing their massive ships forward by muscle alone. For 6 days and 6 nights, they rowed without a single moment of rest. Their bodies ached, their hands bled, and the collective morale of the veteran Greek fleet collapsed into total despair. Then, on the 7th day, they spotted land. This photograph shows a similarly calm, deep blue bay, surrounded by steep, protective green hills. To the exhausted sailors, this kind of sheltered inlet looked completely untouched by the violent winds and waves of the open ocean. When you push veteran soldiers to the absolute edge of physical endurance, basic tactical awareness starts to fail. To men desperate for sleep, this enclosed, mysterious harbor looked like a divine gift. Relieved to finally escape the punishing sea, 11 of the 12 ships eagerly sailed right into the narrow channel, dropping their anchors in the perfectly still water behind the towering stone walls. But Odysseus held his own ship back. A decade of surviving brutal ambushes and betrayals at Troy had hardwired a deep paranoia into his brain, an instinct for caution that overpowered his own physical exhaustion. This diagram outlines the tactical problem. When ships funnel into a narrow inlet, they gain protection from the weather, but lose the ability to leave quickly. Surrounded by steep cliffs, those 11 ships had zero mobility. The narrow entrance was now a lethal bottleneck. Command often requires forcing your exhausted men to do the difficult, unpopular thing, like keeping them out on the rough water while everyone else rests. That hyper-cautious choice was about to save his life. To figure out who ruled this land, Odysseus followed standard Greek protocol. He sent 3 scouts ashore to establish diplomatic contact and ask for the customary hospitality offered by civilized societies. Finding a well-worn path, the scouts quickly ran into a young woman drawing water from a spring. Her physical proportions were immediately unsettling. She was massively oversized, taller and stronger than any human they had ever encountered. She led them silently to a great hall to meet her father, King Antiphates. The scouts walked in expecting a king, but they found a towering, terrifying giant, driven entirely by raw, monstrous appetite. Without a single word of greeting, the giant lunged forward, snatched one of the men, and devoured him on the spot. The 2 surviving scouts turned and ran. They sprinted back toward the harbor in absolute terror, screaming warnings to their crewmates. But the fleet was already boxed in. The total disregard for the sacred rules of hospitality signaled that Odysseus had entered an arena of pure, primal slaughter. The screams echoed up the hills, and suddenly the cliffs surrounding the harbor came alive. Hundreds of Laestrygonian giants swarmed the rocky edges high above the stationary Greek ships. Those protective stone walls were instantly turned against the sailors. Using their massive height advantage, the giants began hurling boulders straight down into the crowded water below. The trap snapped shut. Wooden hulls splintered and shattered under the crushing weight of the rocks. Men were thrown into the water, where the giants waded in and speared the trapped sailors like fish in a barrel. Anchored safely just outside the entrance, Odysseus had to watch his men die. He knew that ordering his own ship inside to fight would be pure tactical suicide. They would just be crushed alongside the rest. He drew his sword, slashed through the mooring rope holding his ship steady, and screamed at his men to row. They pulled at their oars with every ounce of strength they had left, abandoning their brothers to the massacre. Survival in extreme environments demands agonizing choices. The math of the situation forced Odysseus to abandon the doomed in order to save a handful, leaving him to carry the awful weight of that decision. The screams slowly faded into the distance. Out on the vast open water, an eerie, merciful silence finally settled over the lone escaping ship. This graphic captures the sheer scale of the devastation. Of the 12 mighty ships that left Troy, 11 of them blink out here in mere minutes. Hundreds of veteran warriors who survived 10 years of brutal combat were completely erased. This statue captures the immense, overpowering physical presence of a Greek god. It perfectly illustrates the force arrayed against the mortal king. This localized massacre was part of Poseidon's calculated vengeance, designed to methodically strip away every resource Odysseus commanded. The true cruelty of divine punishment in the ancient world was psychological. By destroying his fleet piece by piece, the gods were trying to break his spirit. Odysseus now carried the crushing weight of survivor's guilt, rowing away from the wreckage as the sole commander of a decimated force. Now, isolated in a single, vulnerable vessel, he faced an ocean full of unknown terrors, dark magic, mythical beasts, and a journey into the underworld itself still waited for him somewhere over the horizon. Yet, despite the total devastation of his command, Odysseus refused to give up. He absorbed the grief, manned the oars, and kept navigating forward. A leader earns their legacy when every advantage they rely on is stripped away. Exhausted, grieving, and completely alone on the water, Odysseus kept his eyes locked on his only true destination, Ithaca.